Ooh, slideshow from the beginning. Okay, that look okay, Robin? Awesome. Okay. So my name is Jamie Comstock, and I'm the Health Promotion Manager at Bangor Public Health and Community Services. And I work with a team of people there. And generally, our health promotion team does things like we work on substance use prevention and tobacco prevention, and we work to improve healthy eating and active living in Penobscot County and kind of beyond. So I've been working on cannabis prevention since about 2014. Robin and I both have. And one thing I can tell you is that the one constant about this is that it's completely ever changing. And there are always lots of opinions. We're never short on opinions. So today I'm gonna tell you some of the stuff that we know about cannabis. And specifically, I'm going to focus on the products and the trends and what this means for our kids and our youth. And I'm going to provide you with some resources to use in your work. And I'm hoping, my goal is that you're going to walk away with a more up-to-date picture of cannabis today, and that you can be ambassadors for prevention. So as I mentioned, if you have questions, just unmute and fire away. And if I can't answer a question, and if Robin can't answer that question, then we'll do our best to get back to you with that information, definitely. And so while I've been talking, our opening slide here, hopefully you've had a couple of seconds to look at this. And the title of the presentation is Marijuana in the New Millennium, and it's written on an e-reader. And we did that intentionally to let people, to convey the message that we're doing a lot of the same things that we used to do in the past, but we're doing them differently because technology has advanced and changed. And this holds true for the cannabis space also. And it changes the way that marijuana is sold and bought and used. So we'll look at some of that. So I was going to tell Robin next slide, because we just did a presentation today and she clicked all the slides for me, but I can do it myself, maybe. There we go. So do either of you know, do you recognize this at all? I'm gonna go with, oh, there's Chris.
Yeah.
What could you do with this old bag phone?
Make phone calls.
That's it. That's it. Okay, exactly. And that was like the only thing that you could do with the old bag phone. And now I'll bet that both of you have one of these probably within feet of you. And what can this thing do? Like
Pretty much anything you want it to.
That's right, except your laundry. If you've figured out laundry, let me know for sure.
Right. Or dinner. Well, it can deliver dinner, just can't make it.
That's right. So I don't know about you, but I never would have been able to imagine, a world where cell phone technology advanced so quickly and so thoroughly. But here we are. So now that you've practiced this game of old new, we're going to look at this. And this is what we call yesterday's cannabis, or cannabis 1.0. And Lori, we were talking at the beginning, I'm sure this is kind of what you think of when you think of the old days of marijuana. And this is kind of like the old bag cell phone. When I see this picture, I'm transported back to my aunt and uncle's house during a family event. And all the adults were in the house. I was outside with the kids, and I can hear my grandma telling the story through the open windows. And she was telling me, or telling the family, about how she went to this party with my grandpa and they ate the funny brownies, and how upset she was because my grandparents were drinkers, but they never used drugs. And so I can imagine how unsettled and scared they would have been to have been accidentally high. So as kind of an homage to my grandmother. And in this presentation, I've affectionately also kind of subtitled this presentation as Not My Grandma's Weed. And that's actually a picture of my grandpa, not my grandma, because I didn't have a good picture of my grandma. But what we're going to talk about today is the 2.0 version and beyond of cannabis. And that is definitely not my grandma's weed. Okay, so just to kind of set the stage, legal cannabis is the fastest growing industry in the United States, and spending increased 36.5% in 2019 to $12.4 billion. That's not going to mean much to you right now, but when we look at it this way, in North America in that same year, there were $14 billion in sales of cannabis. Most of that, 87%, occurred in the United States. And then if you look at the distribution of how that came about, 25% was in California, and 13% was in Colorado, and 9% was in Washington. And so for California, that meant that they sold $3.1 billion of cannabis in that year. So this graph chart slide will give you just an idea of where we've been and where we're going, with the amount of sales increasing almost tripling in 4 or 5 years. And as we bring more states into the retail marijuana market and into the medical marijuana market, those sales will increase even more for sure. And this is a map that I could find, the only map really I could find of United States state cannabis programs. So I often caution people, if you are green colorblind, I apologize wholeheartedly for this slide. But in California and Maine, that kind of olive green color, those are the states with both adult use or retail. So I'm gonna use some terms interchangeably here. A retail or adult use is kind of synonymous with what other states identify as recreational. And then there's medical. So the olive green states show you the ones that have both of those programs. And then you have Kelly green, the color of like New Mexico and Utah and Florida. Those are states with comprehensive medical programs. And then you have a handful of states that are like Texas. They only have, they have restricted medical policies. And then there are 3 no marijuana states where none is allowed. And sort of the tack of the industry has been to get a foothold in a state with a medical program, usually by citizens initiative, and then to work on getting retail marijuana in place in that state. So I don't know how much you read the newspaper or pay attention to things like this, but it's all over the Bangor Daily News, and Maine has grown to become, or marijuana has grown to become Maine's most valuable crop. We started taking caregiver tax revenue for caregivers in the medical program in February 2019. So 2019 was a partial year. And in that year, I think it was $111 million in marijuana was sold. And that actually was more than blueberries, maple syrup, apples, elvers, herring, and oysters combined. Then the next year, and this is the year that this article was written in, from January to October 2020, that was like, it doubled. So it was 22 million almost. So it's amazing that in those kind of first couple of years that they started really taking data and keeping track, that it doubled. So just to back up a little bit, Maine legalized medical marijuana in 2009. And then in 2016, we legalized recreational or retail marijuana. That's when that passed. And the first stores came online in 2020. So in the first month that we had retail marijuana available, we sold $1.4 million. And then after that, those numbers completely doubled. So in January of 2021, just a couple of months later, they'd sold $2.5 million. So we see a lot of, there's a lot of money to be had in this industry, and there's even more. So this is a screenshot of my dog is whining in the background too. So so this is a screenshot from the Office of Marijuana Policy and their retail marijuana page. And this shows what the sales amounts for the month of January 2021 was. So in that month, $2.4 million of retail marijuana was sold. And then the other thing that you should notice, this will give you just an idea of what types of products we're talking about. This red on the bottom right, the red bar that is like the highest one, that these are the types of things that were sold. So that red bar is what they call flower, which is the weed that you would crumple up and roll into rolling papers or put in a pipe or something. And the green line is concentrates. That's really powerful kind of oil-based product. And then the yellow is what's called infused product, and those are edibles. So that's the distribution of sales there. And you can see that still most popular is that the flower. This slide I put in here, and I don't know, like, this is the sales amount for the month of August. Now, I got to tell you that I'm not really sure, and I meant to get clarification from Robin about this. It could be that this is a cumulative number.
It is not. There's your clarification. In July, they had just for the month of July, $9.6 million in sales from retail. And they're crediting some of these increases over the summer due to tourism and things like that. So think back to 1 million in January, all the way up to the month of, this is it. So it seems to be like increasing by 1 million every month.
Yeah, I was for sure that, so there's the slide before, 2.4 million. And I thought, okay, well, this is August, it's got to be cumulative, even though the math is a little off. And I would have said this is low for this time of this year, but it's amazing. That's a lot of sales. Thank you for helping me out with that. You can see that the distribution between flower and concentrates and edibles are fairly similar by month. Okay, so now just a few basics about cannabis. So you're armed with that knowledge. There are more than 50 cannabinoids in the marijuana plant, and a cannabinoid is a naturally occurring chemical compound that's found in the plant, and they have drug-like effects on the body. So those are the cannabinoids, are the things that have the effects. And presently, there are two that we really talk about. One is THC, and the other is CBD. So we're going to talk about THC first. And Lori, this is going to start being interesting to you, I think, because what we know is that in the 1970s, there was about 1% THC in the cannabis plant. And today that's increased to 20 to 30% THC. And it is, the plants are intentionally bred to have higher THC levels. And THC is the cannabinoid that produces the high effects. So when you smoke it or use it, that's what makes you feel high. Cannabidiol, or CBD, is the other one I said that we hear a lot about. And cannabidiol, on the other hand, doesn't affect the mind or behavior and may have some healing and medical properties. For example, in reducing pain and inflammation, controlling epileptic seizures, possibly treating mental illness and addictions. The cannabis plant hasn't been approved for medical use by the FDA because basically it hasn't been studied enough for us to know if the benefits outweigh the risks to patients, even though it's being used as in medical marijuana programs. But there are derivatives, like researchers understand that there are helpful aspects of the plant, and they have like pulled out those pieces and made drugs out of them. So there are several kind of cannabis derived drugs that are on the market that are approved by the FDA. And this is one of them. There are like 3 more, I think: Marinol, Syndrose, and a drug called Sesamet. And those drugs are given to treat nausea and vomiting in people receiving chemotherapy. I also have a friend who has MS, and she uses one of these drugs because it helps reduce the rigidity in her legs, like overnight. So it helps her be a little more able to move them a little bit better. So in March 2021, the United States Senate Caucus on International Narcotics Control published this publication called Cannabis Policy, Public Health and Safety Issues and Recommendations. And in this report, they recommended these 5 things. So they say, let's remove the barriers to research. Cannabis is a Schedule I drug. So that means that Schedule I drugs, I think, are determined to have like no medical benefit. Is that what it is, Robin? No medical benefit. And it makes them really, puts all these barriers up to researching them. And so that's one of the reasons we don't know a lot about the helpful, how the plant could be helpful. The second recommendation they made was to study the impacts of increasing THC levels. So from that 1% to the 20 to 30%, what does that do? The third one is to study the impact of cannabis on the developing brain. We know that youth are using cannabis, and so how do those high THC levels affect the developing brain? They also recommended that the FDA should continue to enforce their authority regarding unregulated cannabis products. There are a lot of those on the market. And then more effectively detect cannabis impaired driving. I'm going to grab my dog really fast. Okay. Okay, thank you. So now we're going to look at where the market is headed. And I'd like to put this slide up. You can put this in the chat or you can unmute yourself. If you were to guess, who would the target for this cannabis industry be? Would it be this girl here, or would it be these ladies who are soccer moms and senior years? Any thoughts? And oh yeah, I can't even see the chat. What do we got in the, A or both from Lori? Yeah, so both it is totally a trick question, and both is the answer to that.
Said maybe, I don't know, I'm thinking, come here.
Yeah, so it's we'll look at it. We're going to get into this now, but it actually is kind of both. And here's the reason. let's see. Oh, crud. I think I hit like,
Try hovering over the left hand. There you go. You made some progress.
I got it unstuck.
Zoom. You do get stuck. You
Oh my
start hitting
gosh.
chat or other button. Zoom's not in front.
I won't touch chat anymore. Okay, that's great. So this is a social media post that came up in the health promotion program. I told you is like a group of people working on all this stuff. And we talk about this stuff all the time. And so this ad came up in someone's social media post, and moms everywhere are discovering cannabis with confidence. So there's a point for moms. Here's another one. Cannabis, grown with care, made with love, right here in Maine. A second mom. And what happens, like the way that they get to the way that youth are also targeted is by creating families where where this is regular, where this is normalized. And so just kind of through attrition and kids becoming familiar with this product in their household is how it is actually both A and B. So you guys we were right about that. Have you ever used these Choose Your Adventure books? These are my favorite. When I was little, these books, if you aren't familiar with them, you start off and you read a little bit about the character, and the character, you get to choose what they're going to do. So say the protagonist walks up to a house, and they have a choice between going through the blue door or going through the red door. And if you go through the blue door, you have to turn to page 16. And if you go through the red door, you have to turn to page 24. And so by the end, you as the reader are choosing the adventure for the protagonist, and it's pretty cool. So the cannabis industry is kind of doing the same thing with the products that it is creating. Instead of promoting their products as a way to get high, which is what I thought originally was going to happen. I thought that, the way they were going to market their products was going to be really similar to like a Cheech and Chong movie or Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. I don't even know if they smoke weed in that movie, but just that whole, that feeling. But the reality is that the market is more like a choose your own adventure book, where you can decide the kind of feeling you want, and then you can choose a product that will make you feel that way. So this slide is from the Grass Monkey Cannabis Company in Portland, or maybe South Portland. This one is, there are these drops called 1906 drops. And as you can see, they have Genius. So if you want to feel smarter, you do that. Midnight, if you're tired. Go, I need some energy. Or Love, I'd like to feel more amorous. Their website calls these a toolkit of 6 plant-based experiences to optimize every part of your day. Highly functional formulas that help you do all the life stuff better. So the goal with these types of products really is to provide natural alternatives to pharmaceuticals. And it's genius. There's a gold mine in getting people to replace their pharmaceuticals with natural cannabis products, if you think about it. So other types of products that we're seeing: THC infused coffee, THC infused chocolates. Here's some THC infused wine. And ironically, with the alcoholic beverages that then become THC infused, you have to remove the alcohol first and then add in the THC, and you don't put the alcohol back in. So you just leave it. Here is a Shipyard collaboration with Pumpkinhead and THC in it. This is a screenshot of, or a picture of, a container of gummies from California. And I included that because a lot of the language, I wanted you to notice the language on this container: natural, kosher, made with love in California, low calorie, no artificial sweeteners, gluten-free, like everything is right here. It's kind of like a dream product. You can use it and it won't upset any like dietary restriction that you have. And this is a shot from a video that we sometimes show to just highlight the kinds of ingredients that they're using in their product, wholesome and organic, because they want you to, they're sending you the message that this product is healthy and good for you. So the industry is really moving towards this, like, you know, like a wellness angle. So one of the things that we know in substance use prevention is that substance use is greater when there's more normalization. So I think about tobacco, like cigarette use. So back in, you know, the 50s through the 70s, maybe, there were lots of people on TV smoking cigarettes, and you could smoke in your house and in restaurants and in bars and in airplanes. And so it was really normal. Like that was just what you did. And then as time has gone on and we've understood the health risks of smoking, it's become normal not to smoke. So we have restrictions on where you can do that. So that's what normalization means. We know that when we see increasing levels of normalization of substances in our culture, we tend to see use increase also. So I want to show you just a couple examples of what I'm talking about. So this is some CBD sparkling water. And here is some CBD face cream. And this one we always laugh about in our office, the good old CBD Vaginal Cream. And I think Robin saw something very similar to this in TJ Maxx, and we just always giggle about the CBD Vaginal Cream. So I had to put it in there for you. CBD dog biscuits. And this is a full line of different CBD pet products. And I have a friend who was giving her dog some kind of CBD tincture, and she was taking another one herself to help her sleep. While I was doing research for this presentation, I came across Rob Gronkowski, the football player, and he apparently is part owner in this CBD product line. And I never like expected that. That took me by surprise. That was the first one that took me by surprise. And then I came across this one, which is Cheech Marin. He's selling like some private label flour. This is flour. And then Kristen Bell has a CBD skincare line. Martha Stewart has a line of CBD wellness products. So they're all over the place. This slide, all this slide says basically is that regular old retail stores are going to account for over half of the CBD spending in 2024 as the legal issues resolve themselves. That's what it says in the top. So if you think you're seeing a lot now, you're going to see more as time goes on. And also it says that 47% of US adults responded that there are no differences in the effects of CBD, excuse me, and THC. And we know from a few slides ago that THC is the cannabinoid that makes you feel high, and CBD typically is has a more it's applied in medicine more broadly. So they also say that half of respondents, any product containing hemp will cause effects such as feeling high, relaxed, sleepy, etc. And so what that statement is saying is that consumers don't even know what these products are or how to use them or what they're supposed to make them feel like. But they keep buying them. and they aren't regulated by the FDA. So we're also seeing normalization in other parts of our culture. If you take out that cell phone that I asked you to pull out and you pull up your app store and you do a search for cannabis, like do this sometime. It's pretty cool. Nothing bad is going to happen to you, I promise. And it can feel a little bit sketchy the first time you do it. Robin did it way before me. And then I was like, okay, I'm brave enough to do that. So I do it. And just, you know, type in cannabis and see what you get. And these are a couple of things that you're going to get. There are dating apps centered around cannabis. This is a 3D grow simulator, so it can help you perfect growing weed before you actually attempt it in real life. So it will help you make your mistakes virtually first. There are many podcasts around cannabis, and this one I actually listen to quite a bit. And it talks about all sorts of things, from the types of products that are coming onto the market that you can touch and see and taste and smell, all the way to banking and tracking and all of the systems that need to be in place in order to put those products on the market. So if you have an interest in this, it's a cool thing to listen to. And I guess I would say, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, this is really an interesting time in this industry, because we have the ability to watch this industry from like being born, and to watch the innovation is really it's really cool from that kind of standpoint. But we need to be careful about it in other ways that we'll be talking about. So this is an app called Weed Maps, and I would bet you that that came up somewhere in your top 2 to 3 when you do your search of cannabis in your apps on your app store. And from this app and map, I was able to tell that there are 8 stores that sell cannabis within 10 minutes from my house. And so one day I put my daughter in the car, and she's 12, and I said, hey, let's go take pictures of all of these cannabis stores. And she said, okay. And so here they are. There's the first one, the second one, the third one, the fourth one, the fifth one. This one's new. This one is the one that the woman with the gray hair in that advertisement that I showed you at the beginning, that's this store. This one used to be a childcare center. This one used to be a church, Iglesia La Luz del Mundo, Church of the Light of the World or something like that. And now it sells cannabis products. And I live in Orono, and we're going to have another shop super close to us, not super close to us, in Orono. So I will have, you know, another one that I can add to this list pretty soon. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about Maine's cannabis industry and how it came to be. And I mentioned a little bit of this earlier, but Maine residents, through a citizens initiative, legalized marijuana for medical use in 2009. And then in 2016, in November, in another citizens initiative, Maine voters legalized marijuana for adult use. And there was a 1-point difference between the yays and the nays. So it was really tight. And what that did was it left municipalities in control of regulating a local cannabis industry. Municipalities who have no training to set drug policy at the local level. So here, like kind of in one, you know, slide are the differences between adult use and medical. So adult use retail products are can have no more than 10 milligrams of THC per serving. they can have no more than 100 milligrams of THC per package. They are subject to taxes, so they're higher in price than medical products. They're required to conform to a tracking system. They call it from seed to sale. So that seed has a number and is tracked all the way through until it is sold to a consumer at the other end. And it requires a municipal opt-in. So that means that municipalities have to say, yes, we want to have stores in our town, and this is how we're going to organize and regulate them. I guess the state also has rules that have to be followed. Excuse me. So on the other hand, medical products, there's no THC limit. Remember, the medical part grew up first. There's no THC limit. There's a card that's required. So you have to have a medical card, and you can get that from a doctor who will prescribe that card to you. You also have to pay them like usually a couple $100. There's not as much product regulation. There are fewer citing limits. That's because, as I said, we started with medical, and there was a lack of municipal ability to regulate the location of these places. And so as time has gone on, I know at least in Bangor has indicated they're regulating stores in a zoning by zoning. So they say in these zones, it's okay to locate marijuana cannabis stores. But if you're outside of those zones, you can't. And then in addition, when you're in those zones, you have to make sure that you're, a certain distance away from schools and places of worship and a couple of other things. But the medical movement grew up before that. And so you will see now establishments that have been in place before the adult use regulations came online, and they're still there, even though they may not conform to those zoning requirements. Also, we have a system of Maine-based caregivers in the medical arena, and those are people who provide, grow, have a client base. Let's see, currently there are like 29, I looked yesterday, 2,916 registered caregivers in Maine. And so while the prices can be higher on the retail side, sometimes consumers go to, that appeals to consumers more. And that will appeal to the consumers who don't want to seek a doctor's approval for a card or renew their medical marijuana card annually. And other people don't want their cannabis use officially recorded, like you would have to be on the medical side. And that's especially when they purchase things like firearms. So what we see now is kind of an interesting system where we have both of these systems existing at the same time. With administration, there's like an administrative desire to merge them a little better, but there's a lot of resistance on part of the caregivers of medical because they have a system that works really well for them, and they don't want to lose control of that and go to a more regulated system. Okay. So, that was, I don't know how that got in there. This is a screenshot of the Office of Marijuana Policy. You can go to the Office of Marijuana Policy website and look up your town to see if it has opted in to retail marijuana. And so there are 4 types of licenses there. Retail, so that's selling it. Growing it is growing it. Manufacturing then is taking what's grown and making something out of it. And then testing is testing products to ensure that they meet health and safety guidelines. So now we're going to look at some of the products that are being sold right here in Maine. And I want you to remember a couple of things. One is that we've seen THC levels that have risen from 1% to 20 to 30%. Remember that adult use, in adult use products, there are limits, there are THC limits, so no more than 10 milligrams per serving and no more than 100 milligrams total. And then there are no limits in THC for medical products, either per serving or in total. And I just like to start with this visual comparison. And this is a product that is a chocolate bar. It's actually sold in Colorado, but you can see that it is similar. The Incredibles Mile High Mint is similar in size to our well-known Hershey bar. And that bar alone contains 100 milligrams of THC, which is equivalent to the THC level in 20 joints from the 1970s. So that's just to give you a comparison of relativity of THC, THC level. So here is a retail product, and they're gummies. Each of those gummies has 10 milligrams of THC, and a packet of them, there are 10 in a packet, and 100 for 100 milligrams total. This is some kind of lemon supreme. That's 20 milligrams per piece. So that tells me that it's a medical product. Here are some Cheddar Bites. And the Cheddar Bites have 10 milligrams of THC in them each, and there are 5 being sold per bag. I gotta tell you, I love Cheez-Its, and I could knock down like a whole bag myself. And I don't know what I would do if I only had 5 in front of me. I'm not sure I would be able to control myself. This is a Colorado product that we came across, and I love this product because it's called a rookie cookie, and that whole cookie has only 10 milligrams of active THC in it. And the point of this cookie is to initiate the new user. It's, you know, it's saying, come on, we'll make this easy on you. Whereas some of these other products, like the Cheddar Bites, it would be kind of hard to control yourself. And the deal with edibles is that because it takes a little while for your body to metabolize the product, people get a little bit impatient and they think, oh, it's not working, so I'm going to take another one. And so then they take another one, and then they end up having some effects that they don't care for. Maybe they have like paranoia or anxiety. So that's a problem. That's a problem with edibles. Okay, so here's some honey. I didn't actually know that they put THC in honey, but you can put it in anything. And this is 2 ounces with 100 milligrams of THC in it. So there's like 25 milligrams of THC per tablespoon. And then this is just a look at some of the medical products. Remember, I said that they could have higher amounts of THC. So this single brownie on the left-hand side is 20 milligrams. And then the other 2 products are have 100 milligrams instead of 200 milligrams. And here is some a tincture, which has 1,200 milligrams. So it's also possible to vape THC, and you would do that using just, you know, some kind of vape device and then switching out these cartridges, which have THC in them. And you can see that there are different strains. So there's different kinds, and they all have different, you know, kind of a small variability in the percentage of THC. But that's a pretty high percentage of THC. And so is wax. Wax is a product that has about 80% THC, and you basically go through this process where you pull all the oil out of the plant to get this very concentrated product. And then you can vape it, or, usually heat it up and smoke it somehow. Okay, so now we're going to start talking about the impact on our youth. We've looked a lot at the culture that our kids are living in. So, compared to 10 years ago, it's a real different world with a lot more access to cannabis products. There are cannabis products all over, on our phone apps, they're in stores around us, they're on social media. So we're living in a world where we are coexisting with cannabis products. And so we need to consider what the impact to our youth is. So if you can think of the teen brain as a computer, and as youth are growing and developing, their brains are essentially writing code. And cannabis use can corrupt that code and cause problems for youth now and in the future. And essentially what happens with kids is the last part of the brain to fully develop is the prefrontal cortex. And that controls reasoning and impulse. And it doesn't fully develop until kids are 25. So when youth use substances, any substance, whether that is, an illicit substance, tobacco, alcohol, cannabis, whatever it is, it can affect the development of that prefrontal cortex. We know that the earlier youth start using substances, again, any of them, the more likely they are to have future problems with substances. We also know that if you start one substance, it's more likely you'll try another one, whatever that is, it doesn't matter. And we know, for example, that youth who start using alcohol before the age of 15 are 4 times more likely to report meeting the criteria for alcohol dependence at some point in their life. That's an example of a study that really clearly delineates like the emphasized risk or the elevated risk from using, from youth using while their brain is still developing. And this is why it's so important to delay the onset of any use as much as possible. And that's what we really work to do. We really work to ensure that kids are developing their brains as much as they can before they start using substances. That really is the key. So research tells us that teens who regularly use cannabis are more likely to have difficulty learning, memory issues, and lower math and reading scores. There are also higher addiction rates among people who start using cannabis in their teen years. So approximately 1 in 6 teens who use regularly will become dependent on the drug. And that is compared to a 1 in 9 for adults. Using marijuana weekly or more has also been shown to double a teen's risk of depression and anxiety. So these are the things that we know right now. If you hearken back to that report we talked about at the beginning of the presentation, where that Senate caucus said we need to study the effects of higher concentrations of THC. This is without that in mind. So this is what we already know. So I just pulled together like some, kind of snapshots of messages that come together for youth. And all of this matters because when all of these things kind of are in place together, it increases the likelihood that kids will use. So if you have an environment where marijuana is more available, when the kids are getting messages that marijuana use is not only harmless, but it's actually healthy and good for you. When we have products like candy and soda that have tremendous youth appeal, we have high-tech drug delivery devices like vapes. And when we're normalizing it so that use seems to be part of everyday life, we have a troubling mixture of ingredients. It's a we're brewing some potential, issues here. So this is Maine data from the 2019 Maine Integrated Youth Health Survey. This is 2021. Are we scheduled? Oh, we missed it. So we're going to do it in 2022. We do it every 2 years, but because of the pandemic last year, this is a tool that is administered in person. And so we weren't able to do it last year, but hopefully I know that my daughter's school is planning to do this. So it's a big survey. And in 2019, we looked at past 30-day use of these substances, of alcohol, cannabis, and cigarettes. And we could see that alcohol use and cigarette use is dropping, and 30-day use to us is an indicator of regular use, whereas cannabis 30-day use was staying the same. So we've made some inroads with alcohol and cigarettes, but cannabis use is static. This is perceived harm from regular use. So the question is something like, how much do you think it would be harmful if you had X number of, cigarettes or X number of drinks or something? And then, so 61% of students perceived alcohol, that there would be harm from regular use. Almost 90% did for cigarettes, and almost 88% did for prescription drugs. But cannabis use, the perception of harm from that use is dropping. So it was only 33%, and that was lower than the 2017. It was down from, I think it was 35% in 2017. So this is another question from the Maine Integrated Youth Health Survey. In 2019, of all high school students, 28% reported they'd used a vape device in the last 30 days. And then additionally, 13% said they used that vape device to inhale marijuana or hash oil. So there's some, there are intersections with vapes and with marijuana use. This is just to give you kind of a visual of the things that we've just been talking about. These are, I think it's high school, 12 and older, past month marijuana use, ages 12 years and older, this is a federal, kind of a national survey. And Maine is the circled blue bar on the left. And I circled New York, which is the yellow bar on the right, just to show you that that's the US average and how much higher the Maine average is over the United States average. And it tends to correlate that states who have some form of legalized cannabis have higher rates of youth use. I'm gonna skip that. The other kind of interesting thing that has happened is that past this 18 to 25-year-old group, we've seen rates in this group increase. We've seen adult rates increase as has, I guess, we've expected, and we've seen this 18 to 25-year-old rate increase too. I want to also mention that I heard a few days ago that that youth use, the numbers of youth using hasn't been rising, but the youth who are using more regularly. So that's kind of an interesting nuance in this too. So anyway, past 30-day use in Maine, we have rates that are significantly higher than the United States, 38% in Maine, 22% in the US. In daily use for this group, it's almost double US rates. Women who are 18 to 25-year-old, again, almost double, and this group is really rising, as is this cannabis use among pregnant women. Rates more than doubled from 2015 to 2017. We know that like some people are seeking to treat pregnancy-related nausea and vomiting by self-medicating with cannabis products. There's not any evidence to show that cannabis helps manage morning sickness or that even it's safe to use during pregnancy. Also, people who use cannabis during pregnancy may experience preterm delivery and low birth weight babies. Let's see. This is just a slide that shows from the Northern New England Poison Control Center for Maine cases. As you probably would expect, the calls they get involving marijuana exposure, the majority of them are with the younger kids, like the 0 to 5s. And then the next highest level, which is still pretty low, is like the 13 to 19-year-olds. And that would be probably from like, you know, eating an additional edible when they shouldn't have been or something like that. Okay, so now we're getting to the section about what can I do? And as a parent, the most important thing you can do is let your child know that you don't approve of substance use. Research tells us that you as a parent are the most important voice to your teens. And it's also incredibly important that we start having these conversations about all the things that you've learned today in your community, with your kids, with your friends, with your students, with other teachers, other parents, because youth are getting a lot of messages that that cannabis use is not only okay, but it's healthy, and that, you know, I can replace my prescription medication with cannabis, and that would be okay too. And so the industry has a really loud voice, and we need to even out this conversation. If we choose to stay silent, then we're kind of agreeing with all of the things that the industry is saying. We know that kids need tools to cope and to have hope, and it shouldn't be, they shouldn't be looking to any substance to develop like self-reliant coping skills. Like that's what we need kids to do. So we're going to look at a couple of publications that can help you have these conversations. And Robin's going to drop these in the chat. And then I have a slide at the very end that you could even take a photo of if you wanted to, that will tell you where to find all this stuff. This is a really neat one, the Marijuana Taut Kit. It's by the Partnership to End Addiction. Here is just a little bit of the table of contents. So it talks about the, you know, many of the things that we talked about. It will get more in depth about some of that stuff. It has scripts on how to talk to your teen about marijuana, and scripts about, you know, what to say even. And here just here's some active listening tips, which I thought are great, even if, you know, no matter what conversation you're having, you know, the clothing conversation, or the, you know, I don't feel great about myself today conversation, or whatever. Words to avoid when talking about marijuana. And then these are scripts that you can read, and you can use those words to help you out. Let's see. Okay, then the next one is a campaign that we have in Maine, and it's called the Good to Know campaign. So this campaign was moderately modeled on the campaign that is in Colorado. And this one has also some information about, you know, what your role is, and, you know, specialized information for the role that you have, whether you're a parent or a teacher, and then also the ages of youth that you are looking to communicate with. So I would encourage you to head on over there and look at that. This one is has some more tips on talking with your teen. This one Robin and I worked on together to put out a couple of years ago now, but the information is still relevant. And here are all of those resources together, so you can take a picture of that if you want to. And then, okay, hopefully you've had enough time to do that. That's my information. So if you have questions, if you find something like a resource that's really cool, if you want to just talk about something, give me a call, drop me an email. All right. And then I'm gonna stop sharing, and we have a couple minutes for questions.